Chris Sale versus Blake Snell more than lived up to the hype, but the Giants ultimately fell 1-0, and unless they can win at least 2 of the next 3 in this series, this is a game that could absolutely come back and haunt the Giants.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down in other sports, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And where we get started is by, first of all, just tipping our hats to the best pitching performance of the year in a game by two teams. I mean, just a 1-0 absolute pitcher's duel by Chris Sale and Blake Snell, and we could kind of see it coming. We talked about it. I mean, not just kind of. The way Snell has been pitching recently and the way Sale has been pitching all season, this game more than lived up to it. But the Giants will lament a missed opportunity in the first, and then, with the automatic runner in the bottom of the 10th, a missed opportunity there as well. But first, just to get into some of the statistics really for this game. I mean, Chris Sale ended up going 7 innings, allowed 3 hits, no walks, 12 strikeouts, no runs. And Blake Snell basically matched him. Ultimately, I guess you could call it a little worse, but also no runs allowed. 6 1/3, 2 hits, 3 walks, 11 strikeouts, no runs. And so the run that Snell is on, I mean, that's just an amazing 2-pitcher combination there. But the run that Snell is on, he has a 0.99 ERA over his last 7 starts. That spans back to when he came off the injured list. He took, this most recent time, he took a no-hitter into the 7th inning again. I mean, it was looking, he wasn't going to get there based on pitch count in terms of actually pitching another no-hitter. But he just isn't allowing hits right now, even to a good team that's in a playoff position. And he hasn't allowed more than 4 hits in any of those 7 starts. And he has allowed 2 hits or fewer 5 times out of those 7 starts, which is just ridiculous. 2 hits or less or fewer, 5 out of his last 7 starts with a 0.99 ERA. And so per Elias, Snell's 0.97 batting average against during that span is the 4th lowest ever over any 7-start span in consecutively since the mound moved to its current distance in 1893, minimum 100 batters faced. The only pitchers who have trumped this 0.97 batting average over a 7-start span are Shohei Ohtani in September. This is spanning 2 seasons, so I almost wouldn't. I mean, I don't want to say I wouldn't count it, but it's different when it spans 2 seasons. Late September 2022 to April 2023, Jacob deGrom in May to June of 2021, and Johan Santana in July to August of 2004. So, I mean, it's just unbelievable what Blake Snell has been doing. It is crazy that his season ERA is still 3.91, which just goes to show how tough it was early on. But, I was always saying, this is just, when he had an ERA in the 9s, he's going to be a lot better than this. And he's always been Obviously, there were injuries, but he's also always been a second half guy. And he's got the 3.91 ERA, but the expected ERA is 2.61. The fielding independent pitching is 2.93. Strikeout rate is basically right there with what Sales is at about almost 33%. So basically striking out 1 out of every 3 batters he faces. Walk rate is a manageable 10.1%, down from 13.3% last year when he won the Cy Young. So he's basically doing what he did last year. It's just last year he didn't have a couple of stints on the injured list. And so he's not going to win the Cy Young this year. But if he was pitching like this throughout the course of a whole season, or at least much of a full season, he would be in that Cy Young consideration again. And so what a run for Blake Snell. Unfortunately, he matched up with Chris Sale, who was just as good. And so like 1 run would have been enough. This game was 0-0 through 9. And so if the Giants could have just scratched across a single run, then they would have won this game in quote unquote regulation in 9 innings. But it went to the 10th scoreless, and the Braves scored their inherited runner and the Giants did not. And that was that. And so ultimately, despite the fact that, you can respect and appreciate the kind of historical dominance that these two starters put on display, it's an important game that goes in the loss column for the Giants, and they're ultimately going to seriously feel the pain of that squandered opportunity, especially in the first inning, which I want to get to in more detail in a little bit. But first, some quotes about this matchup. Mike Yastrzemski said of Chris Sale, he wasn't missing anywhere. And if he was, it wasn't over the plate. To be trying to face a guy from an arm slot that none of us are used to facing is really tough when there's no pitches over the heart of the plate. Sometimes you've got to tip your cap. He pitched a great game. They were grinding as hard as we were, meaning so did Snell. You've got to wear that one a little bit and try and move on to the next day and hope to try and get the offense going a little bit tomorrow. And Bob Melvin of this Snell-Sale matchup says it came as advertised with those two guys. They were really dominant. So that courtesy of MLB.com. And coming up in just a minute, we're going to have more quotes. Mike Yastrzemski on the playoff atmosphere and how it could benefit the Giants in the long run playing in a game like that, especially with some of their younger players. We're going to hear from Blake Snell, his thoughts, and an important kind of point that I hadn't totally taken into consideration about how relevant it would be if the Giants could win 3 out of 4, not just in the standings, but for another reason as well. So all of that and the missed opportunities coming up in just a minute and before we get into it. Today's episode of Locked on Giants is brought to you in part by Ibotta. Are you taking that dream vacation this summer but dreading the cost? With Ibotta, you can get cash back on all of your purchases, so you can spend more time making memories this summer and less time simply dreaming about them. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. And it's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta and earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta and using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have wound down in other sports, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is fire up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. I said yesterday the over-under set at whatever it was, 6.5, looked high, or it was like, I think it was 7. Looked high to me, and sure enough, the under hits with a 1-0 final. Now tonight, Kyle Harrison and Charlie Morton, a little bit of a different, very much a different pitching matchup, but the Braves favored here. I don't know. I think it's kind of more even, especially with the Giants at home. Giants money line at -112, the over-under set at 8. Maybe a little low with Morton and Harrison. So there's so much you can check out with baseball still in full swing. So again, FanDuel.com and make the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, here we go. We're going to get into the missed opportunity for the Giants that came early and late, and a Marco Luciano mistake, and the relevance of winning this series if you can do it, or at least splitting, actually, even. That's what I'm saying. So in order to win the series, the Giants would have to win 3 straight now. So that's why this game is so frustrating to accept, hard to accept, because it was right there in front of them, and they just couldn't get it done. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers. Tomorrow we'll be breaking down game 2 of this series. And for your second listen today, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Paul Francis Sullivan, aka Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So, it felt to me like the Giants needed to come through in this immediate situation they encountered in the first inning that they didn't take advantage of, and it ultimately did come back to haunt them. And it started out the first inning with a gift, a 2-base gift. Ramon Laureano overran a fly ball off the bat of Tyler Fitzgerald, and it, to me, kind of, I guess Laureano got his glove on it, so they call it a 2-base error. And then Mark Canha singles. So there's another example. You get a hit with a runner in scoring position, and the run doesn't score. And so I love to just point out every time a hit with a runner in scoring position doesn't score, or you do score when it's not a hit with a runner in scoring position. So that's just another example of why you could get a hit with a runner in scoring position and still not score. And that's what happened here with Mark Canha. And that was their only hit with a runner in scoring position in the game. They got 3 kind of artificial chances in the bottom of the 10th because they get a free runner in scoring position that makes the numbers look worse than they kind of were, in the sense that they really didn't have many chances. And that 10th inning chance was gifted to them, as it was gifted to the Braves. But first and third, nobody out against Chris Sale. It's just like, get a run across. You got Blake Snell on the mound. He might just throw up a bunch of zeros, and that's exactly what he did. And so if the Giants could have simply scored on a first and third no-out situation, then they, who knows what may have been different, but if everything else was the same, they would have won this game in 9 innings. And instead, Heliot Ramos strikes out. Matt Chapman strikes out on, I think it was 4 pitches. He took a ball that was a strike. It was like clearly in the zone. And then he chased a ball out of the zone. And then he fouled a ball off that was in the zone. And then he struck out swinging on a fastball elevated out of the zone. For Ramos, he worked the count full. He got it to a 3-1 count. And then he swung at a pitch that was in the zone for strike 2. And then he fouled a ball off, and then, it was a long battle, but ultimately two really well located sliders on the outside corner for a foul ball and then a swinging strike three. So it's tough. It is Chris Sale. He does strike out 1 out of every 3 batters all season. And he probably really, bears down in those types of situations. But you've got your 3-4 hitters coming up, right-handed hitters against a lefty starter in a game with huge implications. And you simply have to get it done there. It's funny. This has happened multiple times. You don't know yet what I'm going to say, but a swinging bunt down the third base line, or even an actual bunt, where it's been fair, 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 and then it just kicks foul and just kind of barely misses that third base bag. Like if it hits the base, it's fair. And it just kind of kicks foul at the last second. And Heliot Ramos had one of those in his at-bat. And so if that ball stays fair, they don't get anybody out. And it's first and second, nobody out with Chapman coming up. Maybe you have a big inning against Chris Sale, but at the very least you have a run. So for the second day in a row, I'm talking about the possibility of, do you bunt, like a safety squeeze type situation with Tyler Fitzgerald on third? He's so fast. If you're Heliot Ramos and you just bunt, I'm not saying bunt as a sacrifice. I'm saying bunt as a way to try to just push a run across to score a run. And, I get it. Sale's not easy to hit. He's not easy to bunt. I think we take advantage or think it's easier to bunt than it is. People just assume, they say if you would have just bunted, then it would be this situation. But people fail all the time trying to bunt. And it's you're not going to bunt with 2 strikes. So then often you put yourself into a 0-2 count or something when you try to bunt, and then you're way more likely to get out and especially strike out. And so you got to be careful when trying to bunt, but at the same time, you just get the ball down, and with Tyler Fitzgerald's speed, you probably score. And same can be said of Matt Chapman. With Chris Sale's strikeout tendencies, it's something I would consider early in a count when you don't yet have a couple strikes on you. Ramos, 3-1 count, maybe in the 2-1 count, you consider bunting there. I don't know. But they don't. Strikeout, and then Jerar Encarnacion grounds out to third, and the Giants waste a first and third, nobody out situation. And it really felt to me like any time, it's the same with Snell. If the Braves had that same situation, it's the same deal. If you don't take advantage, you very well could come to live to regret that, and that it could come back and haunt you. And it totally did for the Giants. So another situation that did come up was a Marco Luciano base running mistake. So this is the second game in a row we're talking about base running mistakes. So Luciano, it's the bottom of the 5th. He's leading off. It's 0-0. And he hits a ball to third that he thinks gets caught. And so he stops running. The ball is not caught by Austin Riley. And it seemed to me like he decided to kind of just jog the rest of the way. Even once he realized the ball wasn't caught, he didn't sprint hard. And so I could be wrong, and maybe that was his full speed movement there, but it looked like he was running hard and they stopped thinking the ball was caught, realized it wasn't caught, and then kind of ran at 70% or 80% the rest of the way down the line. And he was just out in a bang play. And so I don't know what he was doing there, but I don't know. It's tough. If it looks like the ball is caught, I understand stopping your run to first, but you don't see that all the time, and it's a young player. And so there's a tendency to say it's a rookie mistake. And so that's leading off an inning. And instead of having a leadoff guy on, it's a leadoff out, when if you had simply ran the whole way down the line, it's a leadoff runner on base. And so it's little things like that in a game like this that ultimately can come back to haunt you. Have to point out one positive here. Obviously the pitching was a positive. generally, except in the bottom of the 10th, but it was a free runner, or top of the 10th, free runner on second that scored. So it's hard to give Taylor Rogers too much grief, although, he did allow a big hit and a deep sacrifice fly in that inning to allow the run to score. But there was a unbelievable play by Patrick Bailey and Casey Schmidt gunning down Whit Merrifield at second, who had been 14 of 16 in stolen base attempts on the season. And apparently it was a 1.78 second pop time by Patrick Bailey. Pop time being the time from when the ball hits Bailey's glove to the time, not when it hits the fielder's glove at second base, but when the ball gets to the vicinity of second base, of like right around the base area. I don't know exactly how that's determined, but that's very fast, very, very fast. And they got him. And it was a great play by Schmidt because it was a one hopper that had a high bounce that was like to Schmidt's left. And he snared it and like got the tag down quickly on Merrifield. And so that was a huge play. That was with no outs in a 0-0 game. And so Braves easily could have gone ahead in that inning if that play wasn't made by Bailey and Schmidt. And give credit to Snell too. He probably was quick to home in order. I mean, Bailey's pop time was so good. I don't know how quick Snell was to home, but you got to give the pitcher credit too when you throw a guy out at second, and you have to take the pitcher into consideration when you don't throw a guy out at second. It's not always on the catcher. It's often on the pitcher. And anyway, just wanted to point that one out. And then, of course, in the bottom of the 10th, Giants had the same chance the Braves did with a runner on second and nobody out. So this is situational hitting, just like in the first and third, nobody out. I can't recall if the Braves were playing the infield back. I would imagine they were. Maybe not with Snell on the mound, but it's like even a double play will give you a run in that first inning scenario. But certainly a medium deep fly ball with Fitzgerald's speed, anything but 2 straight strikeouts, and that's what they got. But then in the bottom of the 10th, Giants have that free runner on second. Yastrzemski at the plate, left-handed hitter. If you can just roll one over and hit a ground ball to second base, then you've got the tying run on third with one out. Another situation in which you can score a run without a hit. And the Braves would obviously bring the infield in that situation. You do have Marco Luciano at the plate. They've used all their pinch hitters except Kurt Casale, so you're not pinch hitting for Luciano. And Raisel Iglesias on the mound, he ended up going 2 innings, 4 strikeouts, no hits, no walks, no runs, to lower his season ERA to 1.58. So it's not like, it's the pitching the Braves put out there with Sale to Jimenez to Iglesias is like, these guys are really good. And so the Giants struck out 17 times, walked 0 times. You do have to, to a large extent, tip your cap to Braves pitching, but it's also like when you have these opportunities to score without even needing a hit, you just have to take advantage in games like this. And it especially hurts when your pitching is just as good and you had arguably the better chances at least the Braves had a first and second nobody out situation later that the Giants got out of, and they could have easily regretted, heavily not coming through in that situation. So it happened to both teams, but ultimately it came down to execution in extra innings with the Braves getting a hit and a sac fly and the Giants simply going strikeout by Yastrzemski. That was huge to not move the runner up, and then strikeout by Luciano. That's a tough matchup facing Iglesias, and Luciano hasn't played much, and that's kind of been a weird thing. They basically said the Jorge Soler trade would open up at bats for Luciano, and he barely has played since then. And then insult to injury, Patrick Bailey hits a low liner to left. Looks like for a second it might have a chance to fall in, but Jorge Soler, who didn't play a minute of outfield or any position except DH with the Giants, is out there and left because they have Marcell Ozuna DHing. And Jorge Soler makes like a running, it wasn't like a hard play, but he still makes the final catch to secure the win for the Braves. So pain, and the Giants ultimately fall to 2.5 back, when with a win they could have been just half a game back. And so now the rest of this series becomes all the more important. It becomes a 3-game series, and in order to split even, the Giants have to win 2 of the next 3, and that's tough. But I don't know, the Braves haven't been playing great. It is a home series for the Giants, and other than the last couple games, the Giants have been playing well. And so we'll get into the importance of the rest of this series, the matchups in the rest of this series, and give some injury updates in just a minute and before we get into it. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades. SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert product support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. All right, here we go. We're going to get into the rest of this series, the matchups, why winning the series, not only in the standings, would be huge for the Giants, but also in another way I hadn't mentioned, and I think it's definitely worth mentioning, and then some injury updates. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, yes, we'll be breaking down Game 2 of this pivotal series with it's going to be Kyle Harrison on the mound against Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton had a terrible start his last time out, gave up, I think it was in Colorado, maybe, but he gave up, I think, 4 homers, and so he's like 40 years old or something like that, and has a 4.47 ERA. So the Giants got to get to him, and it's a big start for the young Kyle Harrison. I also promised some quotes from Yastrzemski and Snell and stuff, so I'm going to try to squeeze that in too here. So, yeah, be sure to come back tomorrow for analysis of Game 2. And why this is so important, Giants are now 2.5 back. Like I said, entering this series, if you end up having a rough one, lose 3 out of 4, get swept, something like that, then you're going to be in a really bad spot in the standings. And if you can win the series, win 3 out of 4, now you obviously can't sweep. But if the Giants were to win the next 3, they would be a half game ahead of the Braves. And if they were to lose the next 3, they would be 5.5 back of the Braves, and they'd fall probably further. They'd fall behind other teams too. So, yeah, it's just pivotal how these next 3 games go. And if the Giants can win 2 of the next 3 and just simply split this series, they would be 1.5 back of the Braves. We don't know exactly where all these other teams would be, but crucially, the Giants would then have the tiebreaker over Atlanta. And the way it works now in baseball is that if there's a tie at the end of the year, then the tiebreaker is just determined by your head-to-head record. That's the first tiebreaker. And so the Giants would hold that with a simple split here in this 4-game series. So losing that game yesterday, that's another reason it hurts, because all you would need to do is win 1 of the next 3 and you hold the tiebreaker, and at the very worst would just be 1.5 back. But now you got to win 2 of 3 to hold that tiebreaker. If you lose 2 of 3, then I think you'd be tied head to head, right? Because then you'd be 1-3 in this series, and you won 2. No, you'd lose the tiebreaker if you lose the series. So the Giants need to split. I think I'm wrong about that. If they lose 3 out of 4, they would have the same record head to head this season because the Giants took 2 out of 3 in Atlanta. So anyway, it's just very important how these next 3 games go. And I do just want to give those quotes from Blake Snell and Mike Yastrzemski about the playoff atmosphere. Snell said, "I want to make the playoffs. I believe we're going to. I believe the fans do too." That's questionable. "I believe the team does. I believe," he didn't say I believe, he said, "we've got a good pitching staff, good team, good bullpen. There's no reason we can't do it. We have all the teams in front of us. We need to play to get in. We need to keep winning. I believe we're going to do it." And then Yastrzemski said of the atmosphere in the game last night, "It's a good experience for a lot of these guys who are playing very meaningful games for the first time," referring to Tyler Fitzgerald, Casey Schmidt, Marco Luciano, and Brett Wisely, among others, per John Shea. Yaz says, "It's also important to feel emotions on the wrong side of it at this time, because you don't want to feel that. If that's a motivating factor, it's good to feel it in about as harmless a way as possible. We still have a lot of season to go, a lot of important games to go. It's good we can talk about it on August 12th and not September 18th. You have to find a way to take a positive from something that stings like that." And I agree, and I kind of try to keep that same, I have that same kind of mindset where until the thing is all over, like I'm going to try to take a positive away. And the positive that I'm taking away is that you've still got 3 more games here, and you could easily win 2 out of 3 or win the next 3. There's nothing saying you can't do it. Every day is a new opportunity, and hopefully they can take something from this. So anyway, lastly, the injury updates, and they're pretty significant ones in that Tristan Beck, who had that aneurysm in his upper arm and has missed the whole season so far, is going to throw 3 innings today with Sacramento. And so him inching closer is significant. He could possibly take up some innings from Hayden Birdsong if Birdsong continues to struggle, or, bullpen innings. Tristan Beck showed a lot of promise last year. Thairo Estrada, this is another significant one, to begin a rehab assignment today with Sacramento. And Tyler Matzik, who was acquired in the Jorge Soler, Luke Jackson trade, is going to also begin a rehab assignment today. And so, those are 3 significant names to watch as they begin rehab assignments today. And so that's good to see. Estrada's had a rough year, so it would be interesting to see what exactly they do when he's ready to come back. I think that the obvious thing that they would do is option Casey Schmidt. It's not like Schmidt has hit very well himself, although he has played really good defense, but so does Estrada. So I think Estrada still has a spot on this roster, and not sure he can even be optioned at this point. And I do think he's probably in a better position to be on the roster than Schmidt. So anyway, those are the updates, and that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description, so you don't even need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out tremendously. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Huge game coming up tonight. We'll be breaking it down tomorrow for you. Thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked On Giants.